There's one. Little buck bass right there. Right there on that little flat, that little indention. Boy, you talk about a little one now. Little Apache Lake bass. Come on in here, buddy. All right, you're done. On a square bill, would you believe it or not? We have a little bit of breeze here. I just pulled up. It's springtime, the fish should be moving up. Water temperature is coming up at Apache Lake, and it's so beautiful, but the water is kind of murky, so it's hard to see. Certain areas are clearer than others, but with a little bit of breeze like this, you get up in the shallows and kind of parallel the bank a little bit and just try to get up in there, throw a slow running, little tiny crankbait, little square bill, and you'd be amazed what might happen this time of year. The water temperature is coming up every day. Fish are moving up to the backs of these cuts. They're here. It's just a matter of seeing if we can get anything of size off of it. If not, then we might have to go to worms or something like that, because you know the bass are moving up shallow. Something to really pay attention to this time of year. We had a lot of rain, we had a lot of weather come through, a lot of storms coming through. So what's going to happen is these creek channels and stuff might be running. If they're running, it's a good source for fresh water coming in, aeration, and fish will migrate towards that kind of stuff. We'll move back here, see if there's any water movement back here in this little cut. We're back here up here towards the dam. See if we can get something rolling here. This time of year, you don't have to worry about fishing 40 foot of water. You know, you want to get up in the shallows, those fish are moving up. This kind of bait's a lot of fun to throw. You want to make sure you throw the right size line with it. I'm throwing a 10-pound test line. You can throw a 12. I like the 10 on these littler baits. You get it something a little bit bigger, then you can go something a little heavier. I want to get the maximum depth out of it. I still want to get it down there, and I want to bump a rock or two if I can. I picked the shad color because the water, even though it's a little bit dingy, it's more of a cloudy color. It's not a mud color, it's more of a cloudy color. So they can still see those whites real good, the shad colors. There's one. That one feels a little bit about the same size as the other one. He whacked it though. He's a little bit bigger than the last one. Little crankbait bass. Come on. You done? You done? I barely got him hooked in the back. Hook. Come on. Look at that. So we know the crankbait gets them, but look at these little buck bass. Come on, I barely got him hooked. What you have to be real careful of is you want to get down there and get them quick, so you don't get those hooks in them. Two little buck bass off the crankbait up shallow, so you know that they're up there. Females have got to be roaming around somewhere. But for a good start bait, we got a good little start bait going on here. We'll just keep kind of moving down the bank here a little bit. See what happens. If we don't get anything big, then we'll change up and see if we can find something that might get those bigger fish going. And we haven't caught any smallmouth either, but what we have here is we have a flat. We come back down this canyon wall, and then there's a nice little flat back in here. So these fish will move up in this flat and spawn. And that's where a little bit of that fresh water runs in when everything's kind of running over. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll try to throw right back in there where I caught the little male, because we can't see it, but you never know if that female might be kind of lingering around that area. So I'll make a couple of fan casts in there just to see. There's one. That feels like a little bit better. Oh yeah, oh, that's a nice fish, folks. That's a nice fish. Got my taipan cranking rod here. Oh yeah, come on. You gotta play him out. Let him play. Look at the size of that fish, folks. He swallowed that bait. That's what I'm talking about, son. That's what you're looking for. Move down the bank a little bit. Ah, yeah, look at that. That's the kind of fish we're looking for right there. That's the kind. Big old bass. That's what I'm talking about. That's why it pays to pick up that little crankbait. When they're shallow, picking up that little crankbait, look at that, good old 2.5, 3 pound bass right there. That's probably a 3 right there. Beautiful fish. Oh man, that's what you're looking. And you know what? Here's something else to think about. Crankbaiting's a lot of fun to do. And if you get into it where I gave that fish an opportunity to eat my bait. What I mean by that is I stopped the bait. I was cranking it and then just stopped it. Then I felt him inhale it. And boy, I'll tell you what, as soon as that bait stopped, he was probably following it or tracking it, came right up to it, and as soon as I stopped it, had no choice, he ate it. And so we'll play around with a little bit of the retrieves and see if we can't catch fish doing that as well. Coming back to the back of another little cove, those big females, those bigger fish will hang out and not quite move up sometimes. They'll be on the outside of beds and kind of hanging out, waiting to move up, and those are the kind of fish I'd try to catch. You know, there's no secrets as far as crankbaits go as to the retrieve you want to. What's really cool is you can take 2 of the same guys throwing the same bait. One guy's retrieve speed might be a little bit different than the other guys, and he's the one catching all the fish. We've all had that happen in our boats. So it's not all just about the crankbait all the time, even though it's a good deal, but sometimes it's about that retrieve. You figure out that retrieve that the fish want, and that's your secret. And I'm making multiple casts. One thing that's really important to remember is fan cast the area a little bit. It could kind of go out or in and then work your way out a little bit. When you're paralleling, you never know. Make multiple casts to the area. You know, a lot of it's all about angles, and so as you're going by an area that you tossed to already, it might have not been the right angle for that fish to want to bite it. So that's why you make multiple casts to areas you really feel there might be a fish in. They'll use this cliff wall right here as a channel way back to the shallows. Got him. Got him. I knew I'd catch him off that piece. Oh, not a bad little fish. Not a bad little fish. See how we paralleled the bank like that? Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. Parallel that bank, you're gonna get some fish in the shallows this time of year. Oh, and you know what is so beautiful to see is look how he tried to eat that bait. All right, buddy. Come on. Come on. I'm gonna pull him up in here, kind of lip lock him here. Don't ever hesitate with treble hooks. Once you grab them, you hold them, lock them good. There we go. Just another buck bass, but if you noticed, I threw right alongside. Now what I'm gonna do is, I know we caught that fish, but that's just a little male. What I'm gonna do is take another toss up in there, maybe a couple of toss, and just kind of see if there might be one more in there that's willing to bite. And it could be that big female. So always, after you catch the fish, throw back in there if you get the opportunity. When you pass by the area, sometimes you're missing the bigger fish. I think the important thing to understand about fishing in the spring is just because the lake is dirty and you can't see them, doesn't mean they're not there. You know, always remember they're there. You can back way off. Your catch ratio will be a lot better too if you're not spooking the fish. There's one. Oh yeah. Yes, that's a little bit better. Oh, I barely got him hooked. Oh. Oh. Barely had that fish hooked. Tell you what, that's what's really nice about having a good rod. That'll absorb a lot of that fight right there and not pull those hooks out. Yeah! Look at that! Well, I thought I barely had you hooked, but you did the same thing that smallmouth did. Get it right there in the good stuff. Huh. Beautiful bass right there. Look at that. Apache Lake largemouth bass. All right. There you go, buddy. Watch. Watch. That's what happens when you put him back real slow. There, he's kind of sitting there wondering, what in the world now? That is so much fun. You know, oh man, I gotta back off here. Oh man. You know, it is so nice to be in an area. I see big fish right now. I don't even want to move. Now we change techniques a little bit, but I want to get back real quick to the crankbait real fast. It's very important. You know, I'm using a Taipan Elite Series cranking rod, and what's really nice about this rod is it's got a good backbone, but it also has a good tip on it to where the fish can fight, a real light tip on it. And you need that so when the fish is fighting you and he surges, the tip takes up, you know, that slack for you. Because what ends up happening is if you don't have any kind of tip on your rod, a soft tip, when you're cranking, you barely have those fish hook. When they make that surge, your rod doesn't bend, poink, there goes your crankbait out of its mouth. So it's important to make sure that you get a good little cranking stick for these baits, for sure. Oh, there's one. Yeah, a little smallmouth. That's what I'm talking about, son. Right there in the shallows in these flats. Oh my goodness. Figured I'd come back here and see what's going on. I'll tell you what, when you're moving around, you can't beat that crankbait, let me tell you. That little square bill gets it done now. Up in the shallows like that. All right, you're done, right? I don't want to get hooks in me. I think he hooked himself to where he can't move. There we go. You double hooked yourself, didn't you, pal? Look at that. It's not a huge fish, but tried to get me wet. But just going into this little cut, throwing this around, I'm kind of up in the shallows trying to look a little, but I still don't want to discount my crankbait, you know? So you can do a little bit of both while you're looking, throw up in front of you and parallel the bank with this thing and possibly catch some nice fish while you're looking. Usually there's a big mama in here. Now don't forget, this time of year that Cinco works good as well. There's a couple of different baits you can throw in this stuff and have a ball. A wacky Cinco, you know, anything like that. There's one, good one. Oh, that's a good fish. Oh, that's a monster bass. Oh, I lost him, I knew it. Oh. Hey folks, for my tip of the week, one thing that you can do when you're hitting flats like we're hitting, and then you hit the little what I call divots. And what I mean by that is you'll be tossing in 3 foot of water, 2 foot of water, and all of a sudden you'll come to some place that's got maybe 5 foot of water. You still want to throw the same crankbait. The trick is you throw it out there in that little divot and just drop your rod tip down in the water about a foot or two. You can even get down and do what we used to call kneeling, reeling. But if you dip your rod into the water a little bit, that bait will get down there a little bit deeper, because you really don't need to go to a bigger crankbait if you're going to stay on the flats, right? So just for that little deeper spot right there, those little divots, you can just drop your rod tip down in there and get it down in that little channel there, and you'll still be able to use this bait and catch some fish on it, get a little more depth out of it. But that's my tip of the week. There we go. There we go. There we go. Oh, oh. That one's not a bad one. All right, dude. He just realized I better start fighting. I'm gonna let him fight after that last one I lost. I had to try to muscle that other one out of the weeds, and that was a monster, but this one I don't. Ooh, I barely got that one hooked with one hook. Ah! Yee! Figured I better just get him in. Little male bass. We've had a lot of fun fishing these things today, I'll tell you. Big ones are moving up. But I'll tell you what, there's always another method of catching fish besides just worming. And in the shallows like this, that since they come out with the square bill, it's a lot of fun because you can get up in real shallow water and throw these things. And that's what makes it fun in 2 foot of water, you know. Sometimes you have to throw it slow. Sometimes you got to burn it. And sometimes you just got to run it and then pause it, run it and then pause it. And it's just something you have to play with, and each fish is different. Once you get on a pretty good little cadence that catches them on a regular basis, then you can help yourself a lot that way by throwing it the same way every time. And once in a while you change it up, and I'll tell you what, one of the biggest mistakes that folks make, and I'm the same way, is we get to fishing too fast. We start fishing real fast if we're not catching fish. And doesn't hurt to even slow these down a little bit. Let them ricochet off the rocks and, you know, give those fish a chance to grab it. That's what I'm talking about, son. And when you get up there where you can see them, look what's available. You thought you were hiding from me, didn't you? Come here, buddy. Little sight fishing bass. Love it. Let's get him back real quick. Beautiful fish. That's a big male. See you, buddy. Oh, I went to just a little 6-inch white lizard so I could see it up in there, and couldn't stand it no more. You know, I love to sight fish and that kind of stuff this time of year. I know the water's a little bit murky, but you get into some of this real shallow stuff, you can find them. And that's what I did. Got to retie that, but I'll tell you what, I've had a great time on the show today. Don't underestimate, in the springtime, any time of year to be honest with you, but basically in the spring, I know a lot of people like to get up and shallow and look and see, and I love to do it too, but when there's just not an opportunity for it, and you know, like Roosevelt, lakes like this are muddying up because of all the wash coming in, and I'll tell you, crankbaits are the way to go a lot of times. They got a little rattle in them, and you just use the right size crankbait for the depth of water you're fishing, and you're going to catch a lot of fish on them. Trust me. Play around with your retrieve and see what works for the bass, and get out there and catch them. Till next time, we'll see you on the water. I'm Johnny Johnson. Now, see, that's what I'm talking about, folks.